largest time slot, I want to talk about hurricane recovery discussion with the Federal Interagency Recovery Coordination Team, the IRC team. And we've got a number of folks that introduced themselves that are here today from that team from various offices to understand our needs. The purpose is to facilitate a discussion between the IRC team members and policy committee members of the challenges members are facing due to Hurricane Ian, as well as what federal resources are needed to support recovery. This relates to public engagement action number 4, to increase outreach to policymakers to enhance understanding and support for CCMP implementation. And as we prepare for this conversation, while I mentioned it's the largest time slot we have, I think any member of the IRC could probably speak for the entire time slot. I think any member that's here could probably speak for the entire time slot on needs that have resulted from Hurricane Ian. And so we have to, I wanted the framework for, I think the way this is set up to happen is we're going to get a brief introduction of the interagency coordination team so that the members are aware of that. And then we want to spend the majority of the time hearing from you all. Now, that's still, if we think about all the members that we have, it might allow a 3-minute update of what your needs are. So I want you to kind of get your mind around that speed dating aspect of this introduction and coordination that's going to happen. The CHNEP staff are going to be taking down questions that happen. We could get bogged down in a lot of discussion. So they're going to be taking down questions for IRC members to respond to. So we might not have the immediate feedback that we're getting, but I think it's going to give us a great opportunity to kind of get a holistic picture. I know we're in the early stages of recovery still, and kind of how we fill out that recovery institutional infrastructure to work best is part of that discussion. So I just ask you all the members to kind of think about how they want to use those 2 to 3 minutes of expressing their needs. The IRC to be ready to take notes where there are connections for follow-up that you have, and just the awareness that the staff here are going to be taking notes on the questions and making sure that they're coordinating follow-up for answers and information flow. And so with that, I think I'd like to turn it over to Rick DeBro to get us kicked off.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate you letting us participate in your discussions and finding out really what's happening on the ground for you and where some of those gaps in long-term recovery are. I'm going to actually turn it over to Tanya Pence. She's our Federal Disaster Recovery Officer with the IRC, and she's going to run through a presentation just sort of give you the big picture of what we are down here doing with FEMA. And then maybe she'll introduce Doug. We have a state emergency management coordinator on as well. And then maybe when we close it out, if we have just maybe a few minutes to let Curry give a sort of a recap of some of the things we heard, some of the takeaways. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya.
Yep, thanks. And I guarantee you, I'm not going to be the one that burns up all your time. We're going to walk through this really quick. Again, if you're new to the Interagency Recovery Coordination, this will give you a little bit of background. But I tell you, looking over, your organization and who are we, you're going to see that this aligns really with your mission statement as well. We're the group that supports state, tribal, and local and territorial governments, right? All recovery starts local, and then it's managed by the state, and it's supported by your federal partners in the pursuit and development of your resilient outcomes after a major event that has a federal declaration. And we work off the National Disaster Recovery Framework, which is set up in those 6 recovery support function areas. That's why we had these groups here at the table today, and the experts that'll really spend a lot of time digging into those next steps. So we'll run through who we are, and then we'll quickly get into those potential next steps, and then we'll have Letta kind of do a little quick wrap up at the end. Next slide. This is just a quick visual of some of the agencies, the primary agencies that are associated with that National Disaster Recovery Framework and support the Interagency Recovery Coordination. They do that by mission assignment. We say, hey, we need Army Corps of Engineers, we need Department of Interior, USDA, Department of Commerce to come out and lend your intelligence, your knowledge, your technical support and resources. And again, just the brilliance and I think the benefit of that National Disaster Recovery Framework is it gives the opportunity and the guidelines on how we work together. And again, kind of doing a little bit of homework, just noticing, you know, some of your further or previous discussions, right, need to for better coordination between emergency managers, scientists, response and recovery. You know, we recognize that, and this gives us at least a framework to think about how we do that. And, you know, a couple of challenges that y'all had lifted up, you know, with funding, opportunities for beach renourishment and large scale restoration projects. We got folks right here that I know are going to raise up their hand and say, hey, you know, we got some thoughts or some ideas on that. And then streamlining the federal permitting process. That's never easy and never a fun aspect of recovery. And hopefully we can maybe touch a little bit on that as well. Next slide. This takes a long time. Y'all are very aware of that. It's not a short process. The Interagency Recovery Coordination, IRC, like you, are here for the long haul. And oftentimes, you know, even the funding that it takes to do these comprehensive projects don't come online quickly, right? So I anticipate that we'll be friends and colleagues for a significant amount of time. Next slide. And really, you know, what do? We help with you kind of determine what that big picture is that go beyond just Stafford Act funding, public assistance, individual assistance, and mitigation. Those programs don't always bring community back to whole. It's going to need the resources of all the other federal agencies. We listen and ask questions and really try to seek what is and understand those local conditions, root causes, what are the unique conditions of each area. You know, Florida's got many unique areas. It's not just universal. And so how do we address that based on those local conditions? Identify opportunities to enhance mitigation and resiliency. We would like to work less in Florida, as I'm sure you would too. So how do we always make sure we build in as much mitigation and resiliency as possible? Identify opportunities to engage the other recovery support functions and the agencies that support that. We work to identify communities that may need a little bit of help, right? They may have had the capacity to run normal day-to-day operations, but maybe not after an event as significant as Ian. So who are those communities that are going to need a little bit of support going forward to really address their recovery needs? Hopefully, our engagement is early on, that we're not coming in and having to ask questions and trying to figure out where are you in a disaster, that we build these partnerships and these open channels of dialogue and data sharing early on. And then last, you know, we have access to some pretty comprehensive and I think hopeful data to align with what you're doing. And we can talk more about that on potential next steps going forward. Next slide, please. And then who are those recovery support functions? There are 6 of them. Community assistance. Down here, it's going to say community planning, capacity building. That's pretty clunky. So we just decided, hey, why don't we streamline that? We're just community assistance. Laura Kirby is our field coordinator for that recovery support function. We've got economic recovery. Milton with EDA, Department of Commerce, is here with us today. Health and Social Services, we have them on the phone with us. Housing is on the phone with us. Infrastructure, Dave Apple is here. Natural and Culture Resources, Dan McGoldrick. USDA and SBA, they serve dual roles. They're more in advisory positions that really support all of the recovery support functions and needs that come up. And that is my last slide. I want to put something out there to the group I just found, you know, so impressive and would love to hear how you get that. You're 19 to 1. FEMA, we're really proud when we can say a 7-to-1 for mitigation investment. For every $7, there's every $1, there's a $7 rate of return. But if you've managed to figure out how to do for every dollar, you get a $19 rate of return. That's pretty significant. And, hats off to you for getting, being able to measure that. That's really wonderful. I'm going to pause right now, and Doug Roberts is on the line with Florida Division of Emergency Management. And Doug is our state counterpart for the Interagency Recovery Coordination. And Doug, anything you want to add this morning before we open it up and have that kind of next steps and going forward discussion? Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will be very brief because I am certainly not the expert on the topic that they are in the room. And I apologize for not being able to make it down there today, but I look forward to future meetings and future collaboration. Really, the one thing that I wanted to highlight that has come up a few times in today's meeting, but is really the importance and the strength of partnerships that come up through the disaster recovery process. Disaster recovery is based off of best practices and lessons learned over years and years of work throughout the state, federal, local governments, the nonprofit sector and different organizations. But really the success of a recovery is really hinged on the strength of those partnerships, what people can bring to the table, what relationships existed before the storm so that you can quickly re-engage with folks, and what relationships you form after the storm and you keep going, long time in the future. For Hurricane Ian, we've certainly made, all kind of waterway issues a priority of the state. Back in December, we hosted a coastal resiliency summit with several of our state and federal partners, and we're looking to continue to expand that coordination throughout the months and weeks and years to come. Because we really, I'm sure you all saw, we really had a whole of government response to this disaster. We did things faster and better than we've ever had before. And now we're looking forward to a whole of government recovery where we have partners engaged at all levels, with all sectors of the community and all factors of this recovery process working together to make outcomes, not only to rebuild and strengthen our communities, but to make them more resilient and make them lasting in the future so that, really I always tell our team here that our goal is to work our way out of a job, to make it so that things are resilient, things are effective, partnerships are effective, and things can be leveraged so that when we have future disasters, the impacts are less and the recovery is faster, the response is faster. And so, I'm really looking forward to hearing, the input from all of our partners today to see how we can facilitate that starting here and then, expand this model to across the state, both for Hurricane Ian and for future disasters. So I'm going to turn it back over to the team. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Thanks, Doug. And then the very last slide, again, it just gives you an opportunity to kind of take in and get familiar with who those agencies are, primary agencies that align with those recovery support functions on the federal side. And so with that, I'm not sure who's going to facilitate. Brian, back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. This is going to be a great opportunity to hear on the needs. And as I mentioned, we're going to go and let each member speak to what those needs are. Nicole, could you pull up the maybe the list we had for attendance?
This is online. Do we have online?
Okay.
Okay, right here.
And then okay, that'll work. So maybe we'll just go around the room and then go online with for the specific updates. So we'll start with Henry County.
Thank you. We were extremely blessed in our positioning during Ian, and we were able to afterwards go out and help some neighboring counties and do our part to help those folks out. We were able to be self-sufficient. We had contractors already stood up and ready to go to work in the CEOs. It was safe to do so. The one thing, well, let me back up. We did some spot checking of wells and water quality, and everything turned out to be fine. So we didn't have any further than that. One of the things that we do have, we have had multiple hurricanes and creeks that flow to Caloosahatchee are starting to become really restricted, and which is causing backup flooding to other areas. And we've not been able to coordinate that with the agencies that would help us fix that. And like I said, it's been at least 3 different hurricanes that since we've been able to do any improvement from the horticulture that goes into those trees.
Okay, thank you very much. And I mentioned we're moving through this. If there's questions regarding clarifications of comments or something like that, please, anybody feel free to speak up so that we can get that. I don't want anyone's needs to be lost in translation if that comes up. Ken, let me turn this over to you to ask what needs you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, on behalf of the Charlotte County Board of County Commissioners, thank you to all our regional, state, federal partners. We've got a good team here locally. You've met many of them. I'm sure FDM and FEMA folks have met many of our staff. We've got a great team, but we'll never get through something like this without help. And y'all have been there for us. We're restoring well. We're well along. It's almost 4 months now, believe it or not. It's one of those things that the first need was debris removal. It's enormous. Hurricane Charlie 18 years ago, I've had the privilege of going through 2 Category 4 hurricanes in the same structure, and it's withstood both storms in the north central part of Charlotte County, up on the DeSoto County line. But the debris removal with Charlie was about 1.8, 1.9 cubic yards. As of yesterday noon, we have already removed 4.6 million cubic yards of debris. 90 some odd thousand loads. It's incredible. And our contractor was we had that under contract, ready to go. Our EOC, Patrick Fuller, can't say enough about him. He's coordinated very well. It's a great team, but we still have a tremendous need with our, and that's of the 100 and some odd zones that we've set up for debris removal. We've only got 7 left that really need a whole bunch more pickup. So we're really doing well. But the canals, our waterways, and FDEM is coming to the rescue, I hear. They're at the table here somewhere. I think that's going to be a real important facet of this recovery. We don't know. We've got navigable canals, we've got waterways that are just for stormwater management, conveyance, and they're a mess. A lot of stuff ended up in those waterways. So that's going to take some time. We're looking at literally years, probably a couple of years at least, before we get back to normal. One of the greatest, best things we did when administration recommended to the board that we hire a water quality manager, and that's Brandon Moody. He has been a blessing. I mean, through this event, he's on top of it. Keeping the board involved, and it's really gone well. The other thing that's really a stress right now is housing, temporary housing for the 500 and some odd, I'm guessing, I don't know the exact number, people that lost their homes. We have temporarily for 2 years, we changed our codes to allow people that have travel trailers and RVs to put them in their driveways. If they can't live in their home, at least they can be on their property and watch the repairs of their home. That's working out pretty well. And just Tuesday, we approved a resolution to allow us with FEMA, I guess, some temporary housing on a couple of sites for some group housing. Probably will accommodate a couple of 100 units. Their old mobile home park and off of Kings Highway. So anyways, it's moving along well. One of the other things, I don't know if the state can help us, I think it's CFO Patronus's office has a division, consumer affairs, but the insurance companies. People are having a horrible time with insurance companies. And that is another tremendous need. They take your premiums, but they divvy out the dollars very quickly. So we're really stressed. A lot of our residents are very, very stressed over insurance. So if anything at the state level that can help, but I think it's CFO Patronus's responsibility or has a division that can help us out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And just for clarification, for the canals comments you made, sounds like there's a need for both assessment and cleaning of the.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you. As I turn to Southwest Florida Water Management District, we talked about requesting needs, but if there's capacity for information, if there's capacity for coordination that the recovery team needs to be aware of, I would just ask for organizations to also share that.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, there was a tremendous coordination after this event. I know the Water Management District did offer up a number of staff to assist with the water quality, water sampling, a lot of coordination between the Sarasota Basin Program, Charlotte Harbor, Charlotte County in particular. Brandon Moody was very instrumental in that. And then our EOC operations afterwards was offering up equipment, pumps, helping with debris removal, and I think we're still continuing to assist with the debris removal. A lot of our attention is going to be focused more on capturing the environmental impacts from this event and monitoring the recovery from this and working with our partners on that. There's going to be some environmental impacts from this. Seagrass in particular is probably going to be impacted and has already suffered some impacts over the years. So we have a lot of staff, working with the local partners on the data collection and looking at the after effect of this event. The Water Management District is always available to reach out if we have some services, equipment, or anything that can assist the local governments. Be happy to pass that along to our emergency operations folks. Just let me or Mr. Bispham know, and we'll pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you. Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Good morning. We're actually working in coordination with the Economic Development Administration and FEMA. We'll be holding a listening session of the agencies in our region on February 6th. That'll be held in Arcadia, and we'll get that information to Jennifer as well. But to hear from the agencies and chambers of commerce on what assistance can be provided. We had the opportunity to deploy from some of our staff from Polk down to DeSoto and Hardy after the storm to help with GIS mapping of damage assessments and things like that. But we certainly know Hardy and DeSoto have quite a bit of recovery yet.
Thank you, Jennifer. Don, is there anything to add for South Florida Regional Planning Council?
Yes, there is. As you may know, we only have 4 employees at the moment, so our ability to directly address these issues is very limited. But I think it's safe to say that if you take a look at US 41 out here, we need an assessment of our rail capacity. The Seminole Gulf Railroad does not carry passengers, but it does carry freight. And as you know, it cannot span the Caloosahatchee at this time.
Thank you. Steve Hickok, I cannot read small print on your name card. Say where you're from. I'm sorry.
DeSoto.
DeSoto, thank you.
Well, on behalf of DeSoto County Board of County Commissioners, thank you guys, everybody in the room from day one for your support. As you know, in DeSoto County, we were hit with just record flooding. I've lived in DeSoto County my whole life and just never thought I'd see the flooding that we've seen and the changes that it's made to our beautiful Peace River and the feeder creeks that flow within it. I don't know if many of you have been on the Peace River since the hurricane. It's pretty dangerous still with all the debris and structures and stuff that are in the water. And not to say the least, the sandbars and the banks that have eroded and changed. So really dangerous, kind of really different. But the biggest thing, we get asked is with, just the extensive amounts of pollution from the flooding, of the neighboring properties, the septic systems, all the above. And like we had heard mentioned earlier, swimming, fishing, recreation, when is that going to get somewhat, back to normal? So I'm anxious to hear about the results with the test and everything. But once again, thank you all again from day one, from the whole county for your support. And like I said, it's still a day by day process, but each day is getting better. So thank you.
Thank you. And City of Punta Gorda?
Yes, and I know just enough to be dangerous because I was just installed as a city council member in November.
Don't hold back.
Okay, so a couple of things. the city did an extremely good job on debris pickup. I mean, we were done in December. We had our contractor ready to go. So in terms of the street situation, that's great. The canals are clearly a challenge. I think you all know that we have more seawalls than anybody under management besides the US Navy. So we have a major system. And I think an interesting thing to point out is, and I will get this species wrong, but we have FEMA money that we got from FEMA. They've been great partners for Hurricane Irma to install riffraff. Is that yeah, whatever that is? Okay, because I don't live in a canal, but we can't install it because there is a protected fish that's habitating there. It's a sawtooth something. And so we need a permit from Fish and Wildlife, which we have been unable to get. So, you know, we're in danger of losing our FEMA money that's been there since Irma to make that repair. So certainly we would like our permit from Fish and Wildlife. And then obviously we will have new needs as a result of Ian. And debris in canals is a huge problem. Locally, we had engaged boat owners to go out, I guess, if they have the right equipment to identify where it's located. So we've got it mapped where the debris is. Now the next challenge is to remove it. And then the final comment I will make, and I'm sure Ken is aware of this, the county was looking for funds or is looking for funds from our state for expansion of their EOC facilities. Okay, the city of Punta Gorda EOC was located in our water treatment plant, which was compromised in a storm. We don't have a dedicated space. And so we are seeking funds to take our new public service facility and expand to include. I will say, I don't think we got a great response from our delegation, but it's still a definite need for us. But really like to get the fish problem taken care of.
The small tooth sawfish.
Yes, small too. Thank you. Thank you. Not a boater. All right. But thank you very much.
Thank you. And as we come around Highland County,
Yeah, Scott Kerouac, on behalf of the Highlands County Board of Commissioners, we'd like to thank everybody for all the work they've done. Highlands County, we were certainly impacted. The eye of Hurricane Ian came over the top of our county. You know, traditionally, the northeast corner of the eye is some of the most strongest part, but when it reached us inland, the western eye wall of the storm really impacted our neighbors and more severe to the west of us. We had areas in our county that had combined rainfall of over 30 inches in the month of September. So certainly we had a lot of localized flooding and stormwater issues that we were dealing with. Our emergency operations staff had been preparing long before the storm, doing some drills, some mock drills and what have you for hurricane preparedness. So that certainly came in handy as Hurricane Ian approached us. We pretty much have cleaned up most of our debris removal has come to an end a couple of weeks ago. Collected close to 500,000 cubic yards of debris, and surprisingly enough, we've already received a payment from FEMA for $6.1 million the first week of January. So that was much unlike Hurricane Irma that took us close to 2 years to get reimbursed from FEMA. We were very pleased that our first round of reimbursement came as quickly as it has. So we're currently conducting 3 basin studies, water drainage studies in Highlands County right now to deal with some stormwater issues. I'm working with our state partners and some possible water quality funding that we would like to look at for Highlands County related to stormwater. There's certainly, you know, how we fit in this group here, the very western portion of Highlands County is still within. So we do have a small sliver of our county that's within your geographical boundaries, but certainly a lot of our water bodies and watersheds contribute to flowing into the estuaries and what have you. So we're very vigilant of that and what have you. But all in all, most of our 95% of our citizens had power within 3 days after the storm. We have some communities in our county that never lost power. So we were fortunate there, but I think it's truly a testament that you can see
especially after Hurricane Charlie, then Hurricane Irma, you constantly see a lot of crews out trimming trees from around power lines and things like that. When Hurricane Charlie and Hurricane Irma, but I think we were kind of behind in doing that in the state. And I think they recognize that, because as much as I think that we want our power back on in our homes to get back to normal, we also realize that when those power meters are not spinning every day, a huge revenue loss to the power companies. So I think they've recognized that, and they're keeping the lines clearer. And certainly I believe that came to advantage to us inland. Like I said, the storm certainly lost some of its strength by the time it reached Highlands County, but certainly affected us and caused a significant amount of damage in some areas of the county more than others. But all in all, we were blessed compared to some of the other folks down here. And certainly we were able to divert some of our resources to the harder hit areas. And our debris, like I said, we had 400 some odd thousand cubic yards of debris. We had less trucks picking it up because they needed to be down in this area, focusing more on the harder hit. So certainly we had some crews and they stayed at it until they got it done. But all in all, we're very fortunate and blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize for the casual facilitation. I'm going to just keep moving down the line if I can't see a name tag.
Sure, Chad Hughes,
Thank you, Chad.
Town of Fort Myers Beach. So I'm environmental staff, so I can mostly speak to that, but I mean, in terms of, we're ground zero, level of need is yes in every facet. Everything from housing and socio-economic support to debris removals moving along, but there's still a lot of houses there that are destroyed, but still there. And, it's just complete devastation over there. But I think the community has a positive attitude towards building back better and taking advantage of mitigation to improve. And if we do get hit with another 15-foot wall of water, not to have a level of devastation from there before.
Well, thank you. And I'll just stress, I think what a lot of folks have come here to deal with is when a community is absolutely devastated. There are surrounding areas, neighboring counties, neighboring cities, state entities, federal entities that are here to help share in the burden of that recovery and step in when an area is overwhelmed. So I think this is a great opportunity. Thank you for sharing.
I'm Mike Miller, Sanibel City Council. Sanibel was also ground zero this little event. And I want to thank our federal partners, FEMA and FDEM, for all the support they've given the city since September 28th. We've, in terms of debris removal, we've removed over 1.3 million cubic yards so far, which is a lot for an island of 18 square miles, 2/3 of which is conserved. But we have more to go, and we are concerned about our ability to get the vegetation debris removed by the March 29th 6-month deadline of the FEMA Public Assistance Program. So one of our requests will be to, I'm not sure how to do it, what jurisdictions are involved, but to get some kind of extension to that period of time for reimbursements for debris removed after that date. Another concern we have is in connection with beach renourishment. The DEP has estimated that Sanibel is going to need about 520,000 cubic yards of sand renourishment. It's going to cost about $27 million. The state has promised 48% of that, but we need funding for the rest of that. And our beaches are not engineered, so that contemplates funding requirement for that. We'll also need a program for restoring vegetation on the dunes relating to our beaches. A lot of the dunes are owned privately, and I'm not sure what kind of programs we're going to need to accelerate the restoration of that important vegetation to ensure that we remain resilient. Another concern is temporary housing. 75% of our multifamily units on the island, including condos and resorts, are without power even today. And we've had to demolish a lot of our affordable housing locations. So we have a great need for temporary housing. And ideally, I'd like to have a contact for someone at FEMA and at the state, both of which have temporary housing programs, so we can cut through the red tape and ensure that our residents who need temporary housing get it. And lastly, we have a need, the storm surge impacted our sewer system, particularly with respect to electrical power for various lift stations, over 100 lift stations. So we have, guess what, a need for money to restore those components. And I think I'll stop at that.
All right, thank you. We'll go to members online. We'll start with Ally McHugh. Ally, if you're still on, if you want to unmute. Let's go to Gay Sharp. Not hearing anything from Gay. Katie Arrington.
Yes. We were devastated by Ian on our west coast, Estero Bay properties, Broadway West. We lost several hundred homes. And in the process, we had already started our studies for septic to sewer. And so now this has really created a problem because we had homes that border the Estero Bay State Park that were under 8 feet of water. And those were the ones destined for septic to sewer. So we have a challenge. So the study has been done. We're in the process, we were in the process of starting. And so now we're still going to continue with that, but this has become a challenge. And we have hundreds of people who are living in RVs. They have no FEMA trailers have been brought in as of yet. And it's a interesting challenge for us. So anything that can be done to make an awareness on the septic to sewer and help us to meet this challenge. We were ahead of the game, but we are in a situation right now because we're witnessing people who were in the eye of the hurricane who lost their homes. The challenge for them right now is there's a lot of mental fatigue, and I think the whole area that got hit with Ian probably is in a situation where not just the water part of it, but what is happening now. And I don't see it getting better right away. So like everyone else who's been reporting, and we've hauled off tons of, I cannot tell you the tons of debris. It was on an acreage of about 30 acres. And that's been cleared. As of last week, it was cleared. It was hauled off to someplace. I don't know where, but it was. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Roland Ottolini.
Yes, good morning. Roland Ottolini, sitting in on behalf of Commissioner Sandelli and the Lee County Commission. As you're aware, we've also took the direct hit of near Category 5 hurricane, storm surge over 12 feet in many areas. Rainfall was marginal. I mean, it's maybe 5 inches of rainfall. So most of our flooding was due to tidal surge, but we have basically the same needs as those spoke before me: Charlotte County, Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, and Estero, regarding housing and economic recovery. I don't need to, I repeat all that again, but we have those needs. And so the county's also established a long-term recovery task force that mirrors the framework that you mentioned earlier, and that's being spearheaded by Commissioner Ruane. So we realize we have our immediate needs, but this is going to be a long haul recovery from years on end from here on out. Some of our more immediate needs are regarding debris removal. We've had a pretty good handle on housing and construction debris and vegetation collection. Nearly 118,000 loads collected so far, equating over 5.8 million cubic yards of material. One of the big challenges for us is the waterway debris removal. It's tough tracking where that is, and anything we can do to coordinate with the state and others on that effort, because you have state contractors handling titled vessels and RVs and vehicles and waterways, and also untitled work. But that has left the balance of what Lee County is pursuing internal waterways. And before we can get any kind of reimbursement, or we're at a hold, is we need to go through NRCS. And so far we have been told that they do not currently have funding for that. They came out and did the assessment. We've given them our inventory of what we needed done. However, it has to go through a whole process, environmental evaluation of our needs. And our biggest concern is we're not that far away from our next rainy season. And so we got a lot of waterways, creeks and streams and county canal systems that are sitting with still a lot of down trees and debris that need to be cleaned. They're not moving forward. And so we're kind of on this holding pattern because we will not get FEMA reimbursement until we get a denial from NRCS or NRCS funding. So we need more coordination on the waterway removal. Beach renourishment, we're proceeding. We had a few breaches over beaches in certain areas, and that we're addressing Lover's Key, other locations, Bonita Beach, area south of Blind Pass, that's an evacuation route. We're being addressed with DEP on some funding there. So thank you for giving me the time to mention our needs.
Thank you. Maya Robert?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So just for the record, this is my first time sitting on the policy committee. I'm covering for Council Member Jessica Cosden. I am the Environmental Resource Manager in the Public Works Department. So I'm going to keep it short because I don't want to talk about things that I don't necessarily know about all that well. But I'm echoing what Lee County has said, and some comparable things from Fort Myers Beach. We have a lot of debris. I think we have about 7 years worth of horticultural debris that we are processing. We just stopped the collection of those. We started canal waterways debris removal since November, and this effort is gonna go through April. We have about 400 miles of canals. This is a humongous task. And we have extremely restrictive guidelines that we have to abide to, and it is very difficult to have an efficient removal of waterways like Roland just mentioned. So what I would like maybe to say personally that might not have been brought up. My concern right now is that we had Irma 5 years ago, and then now we have Ian. And one of the things for local government, we're really into the response. We're into addressing issues right here, right now, but we have to look in the future. And one of the things that I would like to know is coordination of flooding forensics. Is there a collaborative of agencies that are looking at satellite imageries, flyover recognition, resident reporting, high water marks, all these information that were possible to collect from this real life event rather than modeling, and then gather this data to really have us better prepared and better understand what are our risks and, you know, alleviate the work and the legwork to be done by local governments on that matter, because we know we're going to have another big storm coming. But without assessment, it's going to be very difficult for us to leverage either state or federal funding. So that's about what I have to say. I don't want to hold up the time too much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike Moran?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I got kind of a sketchy connection here, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm sitting in for Commissioner Smith. Here to listen. I've been married for 30 years. I'm perfectly trained to listen and not talk, but I did want to take a minute supporting Commissioner Doherty's remarks. It truly is remarkable what took place here for this debris removal. It's just anybody with a reasonable mind looking at this to challenge what took place is really, I don't think is completely disingenuous, but it was just a massive, massive amount of work. With that said, just in the interest of the folks in the room and just bigger conversations, we've been having a lot of talk internally and going to reach out formally, maybe for some greater efficiencies related to some of these private communities and mobile home parks. We were just definitely struggling with a little bit of that, and still struggling with some of these communities that thought they were doing good things, and bringing the debris out to some locations that weren't approved, and then all of a sudden people were piling on and thinking they were basically dumps. But whatever, nothing we can conclude in this meeting, but we'll reach out formally with staff, and maybe if we can figure out some efficiencies for the next one that comes about. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you. Alice White? Alice White, are you still on? Okay, let me ask if anybody is online that hasn't had an opportunity to speak. Okay, I'll turn this over to co-chair Jennifer Carpenter, FDP.
Yeah, so just a couple comments. A lot of people have touched on the debris issue, which is clearly a major issue for everybody. Commissioner Miller talked about Sanibel, small island, 1.3 million cubic yards collected. And I believe that the percentage of C&D, construction demolition debris, in that 1.3 million cubic yards is over 50%, which is huge, right? It's a much bigger thing to manage than if all of your debris is vegetative debris. In Lee County, and Roland can correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're about 35% C&D. That's in unincorporated Lee County. And city or town of Fort Myers Beach, Chad, I'm sure your percentage is incredibly high in terms of C&D versus vegetative debris. So that's just kind of, it really reflects the unprecedented scope of the storm surge, which is what caused, you know, that's the reason for all of this C&D that just took out structures or damaged structures enough that they have to be sort of ripped apart to be repaired. So we kind of have a handle on that. We're managing the land-based debris with all the challenges that go along with that. But several people also mentioned marine debris, and that's something, the scope of which we have never dealt with before. It has gotten off to a start. DEM has come to save the day, certainly, and has started that process kind of in the hardest hit areas of Estero Bay. I think we do need better coordination on that, and I'm gonna corner some of the DEM folks. And I know that our local DEP staff on the ground has been really trying to be incredibly available for the actual contractors doing that marine debris removal to try to minimize, you know, impacts. We're talking about mangrove islands and things like that. But there are still sort of a lot of questions from, I think, a lot of the municipalities. How are we going to get all this handled? And so I think it's that's kind of our next big question that I just want it out there on the table that I think we need better coordination and communication on that marine debris issue as we move forward with it. We will get there, but it's something that's our next kind of big challenge here, besides some of the continuing human needs.
Thank you. And I'll share from EPA just in terms of and resources. Some of the things I've heard about is the challenges with septic systems, septic to sewer. There is a large allocation that was in the most recent omnibus bill to augment state SRF programs. It'll be in the amounts of hundreds of millions of dollars specifically for Florida for both clean water and drinking water SRFs. We don't have exact allocations for Florida yet, but it was 1.1 billion that was for Florida and Puerto Rico, impacted by Ian and Hurricane Fiona. So all of the eligibilities of SRF will be included in that. For clean water, there is green infrastructure that they can be concerned. This funding can be used for planning as well as infrastructure. And the intention for it is to build more resilient systems. So specifically for greater resilience, and the eligibility is for communities that were impacted. So it's a smaller field that you're competing with than typically in SRF. And there's no state match required. And typically this is all given as principal forgiveness. So it's a nice opportunity to address the needs of communities for drinking water, wastewater, and green infrastructure opportunities. So guidance for that will be forthcoming. It's being worked on now. The funding will be routed, of course, through FDP, through normal SRF channels, but a more focused eligibility that I think will be very, very meaningful.
Jim, just to answer your question, just texted our debris contractor. He said in round figures, 95% CND, 4% sand, 1% veg.
Wow.
I'll get the cubic yards in just a sec, but it's a lot.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So thank you, members, for all of those updates. And we have.
Excuse me, Brian, I'm sorry, it's Commissioner White. Can
So come off you. Thank you for joining us, Commissioner White. Please
I missed my roll call. I'm sorry. But yes, thanks for doing this and for wanting to know what transpired and what could be fixed for the future. Here in Northport, we're in that geographical location that we're the southernmost point of Sarasota County. And at times, people in other parts of the county don't know what's going on here. We have, of course, experienced major flooding. We are in the big slough, so all water sheet flow comes through here, and that is really what impacted us for days. FEMA was right there. I've lived in Northport since 1990, so the difference between the response time with Ian and Charlie is like day and night. I taught for Charlotte County Schools, so I felt that impact when the schools were closed for 2 weeks, and going into Charlotte County to help people with their recovery efforts. And this response was so much better. I just want to put that out there. But some of the things that we had problems with is that we have flooding in our streets, even when there isn't a hurricane. I had 20 inches in my street. So even when there were locations set up, we couldn't get to those locations. And I know the Shannon Staub Library hosted the FEMA Recovery Center, which was wonderful, but the people who live along 41 really couldn't get there. And I don't know, there was some talk about, or maybe something came to Northport Library, which is on 41, but it wasn't in the same capacity as the one at Shannon Staub. So that was a little problem there. And also the fact that, yes, Sumter Boulevard exit was closed because the water went over the bridge for the Myakkahatchee Creek. And then it remained closed because that part of the roadway was continued to be flooded. So that really hampered some rescue efforts and people getting out here. So I just wanted to share that I don't know if that's a city thing. I did bring it up to our city manager that when we heard these food trucks were going out and they were stationed in areas along Price and all the cross streets. And I said, that was great. But again, with 20 inches of water in the streets, we couldn't get there. And unless we hiked 2 miles down there. So if there was some way to really bring those vehicles into the areas where people couldn't get out of their homes. Somebody mentioned FPL. Yes, I was amazed at how quickly the power came back on, and the FEMA trucks. When we started seeing those dual trucks, somebody said, "What is that?" I mean, it was just amazing to see them right there on the ground and ready to get going. So just wanted to share that with you. So thanks.
Thank you. We have between 25 and 30 minutes left. I know the IRC requested some time at the end, but I think for kind of a wrap up, but I think we also probably have some time for back and forth dialogue. But I'll turn this over to the IRC to follow up on anything that you've heard, ask more questions, and give any kind of wrap up comments that you all requested to give.
Thank you, Brian. So first, I would like to say that it's definitely a great pleasure for IRC team to be here. And I would like to thank EPA and also the CHNEP for allowing us to come and be part of this meeting. I think this is I think, and I really hope that this will be the beginning of a greater partnership as FEMA IRC is supporting the state in the primary goals that are set up for the long-term recovery. Hearing the points and the needs that you have addressed, I think it gives us that initial point, because again, in our support to the state, it's our goal to understand from the bottom up, what are some of the needs, what are some of the aspects that you think of in terms of long-term recovery. Maybe in some of these counties and your communities, you're talking about debris, that you're still dealing with the debris and perhaps have not had the chance to sit down and pause and think of long-term recovery, the 5, 10, 20 years. And I think this platform really is the perfect setup for us to hear and understand along with the state, what are some of those issues, or if you are not there, perhaps we, meaning IRC, could help to navigate and help your community to eventually go through a process so you can start putting all these different needs into what a plan could be for the long term. Hearing that you have, for some of the counties, that common needs when it comes to the flooding, when it comes to the waterways, and by listening to these, I think being in this platform, it allows to see that some of them might be just with the local jurisdiction, but some of them go beyond the local jurisdiction. And as we IRC help and hope to help the communities to address this better, is that some of them might need a deeper dialogue if we start looking at regional. We might be able to help to come with solutions with our federal partners into just one aspect. But if that one aspect of the flooding is going to cause 5 of your neighbors down the coast to get a bigger flooding, then we're not really solving. So I think by being here as a whole, really it helps us to start thinking beyond of what the immediate need was after the event. I think in support of our state and understanding what the primary goals of this great partnership, it allows us to know that it's in alignment to what also FEMA is primary goals are, which is bring that whole community of resiliency, and the whole community starts with you. The better we understand what those needs are, then the better we will be able to basically facilitate and be able to bring those additional resources from the entire federal government that perhaps can help you to be better prepared for the future. Also to be able to have a better prepared nation. Several of you have pointed out that you want to understand
how the data can be utilized again, not only to what happened with Ian, but to be better response, to be the education. And so from the standpoint of IRC, is definitely crucial to have these one-on-one discussions with you so we can go a deeper level to know where you stand with those issues, where either from the water quality to the economic aspects or to the mental health. Because again, we have these broader partners that again can help your communities to be stronger as you go through the long-term recovery. So what I would like to ask is, from your standpoint, from your perspective, what do you see that would be the next step? Because again, we as part of the federal government can certainly think of what next steps would be, but we wanted to hear from you what you see, what you would like to have as a next step. So then we can start putting the process to get to that next steps.
I'll just jump in to say that one of the things that we as the CHNEP staff will be doing is compiling all the comments that each of you have offered up today, providing those in writing to the IRC for them to provide written responses with contact information for follow-up so that you get specific instruction as how you can proceed in working with them to resolve the issues you've raised. So we'll be doing that in collaboration with the IRC after this meeting. We'll be sending that out once it's ready to all the management and policy committee members via email. So you'll get a copy of that. But I do think we do have a little bit of time. So if there's any immediate responses from the IRC to things that they've heard as to resources, programs that could assist in resolving some of these issues, we'd like to go ahead and hear those while we have time. And I see Commissioner Doherty.
Yeah, I have
Has a
kind of
comment?
a request. I guess it's more of a regional, not just Charlotte County. One of the things that feedback I got from Claire Jubb, who's our co-chair for the management committee, when she briefed me this week, was during the storm and immediately after the storm, there was no prediction capability as to the lag factor, all the rainfall that went to the north and the watersheds of the Mayak and the Peace River that were hitting you guys. There was no way to know when how it was going to peak and when it was going to hit us. At one point, Charlotte County lost I-75 because of the Mayak, US 41 because of the structural at Sunseeker, that a crane came down, or close to coming down, and US 17. Our three primary roads were cut off. Emergency, the hospitals were shut down. We were airlifting people, and immediately after the storm, it was a mess. But there was no way of predicting. The managers at EOC didn't have a model, didn't have anybody, whether it's a water management district or core issue. Maybe in the future, getting together to create that kind of a tool, so the emergency managers can look and say, okay, we got that kind of rainfall in the basin. This is what you're going to see for peak staging at Charlotte Harbor and up the river. I think it would help all of our communities if we had that kind of tool during an event.
Say that we looked at that immediately because we've been doing hydrological modeling in partnership with many in this room. And there were unprecedented conditions. For instance, the Peace River peaked 19 feet higher than the highest ever recorded in history.
Amazing.
So the models typically are built on historical conditions, existing conditions. We're dealing with future conditions that are busting wide beyond what we could even have predicted or foreseen. We're using climate models and we're continually trying to integrate those in all of our planning efforts to project. And we'll hear today that science is evolving rapidly right now in the climate realm. And we're going to hear from the National Laboratory next as to rainfall and how they are tracking that. And they're seeing, again, unprecedented, unforeseen rainfall that feeds into all of this. So, you know, we're going to have to evolve to do what you're saying, but we agree that that's absolutely critical to being better prepared.
And it's really good to hear, because now we have something else that we can throw into the models. We can calibrate now with this event. And we have stages recorded And this will help us a lot in the future. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Steve Hickox?
Ken, thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point. As soon as the storm ceased and we had multiple people getting out on the roads, myself, one of them. That's a great point. The water rose so quickly. We had individuals going to help family and friends and could not get back to their homes and were trapped. And as you know, we had hundreds of people, families that were trapped and could not, move, get supplies, not including the wildlife, horses, cattle, everything, that were trapped, and a lot of them unfortunately died, drowned. But if there was some way that we could judge and somehow get out there quickly and shut down the roads, we had individuals that were, we had tons of washouts on our major roadways, vehicles that were wrecking and running off the road. Like I said, just some way that we could judge that. And, we talked about the pollution and the debris, with homes and everything we know, but the Peace River had so much, and still has, and will for years to come, has so much debris that has flowed for miles up into the woods and the creeks. And if there's an organization out there that could help us, as time goes by to help clean up and pick up this debris. I mean, as we know, it's a beautiful fishery and a lot of wildlife that, lives up and down the Peace River. But that's a great point. Thank you.
So I would like to give the opportunity to our RSFs and our federal partners to perhaps give like an initial view from their standpoint based on the issues that have been brought up by the different counties. And just, again, this would be like an initial discussion that we can take further down in terms of like resources, but just so then you can have an idea of what we eventually can develop as form of resources available to address your issues. So let me start with Milton.
Sure. Yes, my name is Milton Cochran. I'm the field coordinator for the Econ Recovery Support Function during this mission. During steady state time, I serve as the Economic Development Integrator for the Atlanta Regional Office, a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. During this event, the goal of the Econ Recovery Support Function is to help Florida and the communities impacted return to economic and business activities, including agriculture, to a state of health and develop new economic opportunities that may result in more stable and economic viable communities. In that goal, we've done a lot of listening sessions over the last couple of months in concert with the various regional planning councils and the impacted communities. We're going to continue those ongoing listening sessions, assess what we've heard from these listening sessions, and then roll back around with a series of what we call economic recovery workshops, where we get more in depth with those impacted communities, with issues or projects that they've come to place as priorities for those communities, and helping to identify resources as it relates to getting their business in the industries back on their feet. Once we've done that, we're going to probably sometime shortly after the mission is in, work with further support from the various resource federal partners, state partners, to help implement some of those priority projects that might have been identified during this whole planning process. That's just a quick snapshot. It's a host of other things we got going on, but I'll leave time for others to speak.
Thank you. Diva?
Oh, I'm not an RSF.
Well, you are in support of the assistance.
Right.
Yeah. You are.
Our role primarily is listen to the feedback that you've provided us. And eventually when everything's evaluated and we look at what priorities are on the top of the list in terms of recovery planning, we would work with your local officials to develop a project scope to just determine what your priority needs are in terms of recovery planning and
what subject matter experts you need to support that recovery planning process based on your needs identified. We're very much like you provide technical assistance and technical support and connect you with the subject matter experts that you need. So I'll let the rest of the RSFs talk about what their areas are, but what we do is majorly coordinating, identifying those resources and providing you the technical assistance you need to develop plans and projects that could help you, increase your eligibility or understand how those programs work. So we're very much a technical assistance focus and, just bringing people together, making the connections. That's our primary role. Thank you. David?
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the issues I heard, we've heard a lot, especially with in terms of the septic lift stations, those issues. The infrastructure, one of the things we try to look at is more from working with you is figure out resiliency in terms of how to make these stronger and better able to withstand impacts from storm surges and being submerged. So that's one of the things that we would probably try to meet with the individual counties to assess that and see what we can do, figure out, either from the technical expertise or from identifying maybe some areas of funding that might be able to use to fill in those gaps that you don't from the FEMA aspect. Also on the beaches, that's one of the things we've been focusing a lot on too, is coastal resiliency from working with Rick DeBro. And one of the things we're trying to look at is how to better make these beaches more resilient. We saw a lot of damage on not only on the west coast down in Sanibel and that and Fort Myers Beach and Pine Island, but we also saw a lot of damage in Volusia, especially by the sea and Daytona shores. One of the things we're seeing is a lot of erosion due to the tidal surge. So that's something we're looking at is how can we better make these beaches more resilient in terms of protecting the beaches themselves, the dune systems. Are there some nature-based solutions that could be applied to help with that? But also looking also at the estuaries as well, because some of those estuaries can damage this. And again, these coastal barriers are our first line of protection and providing it for the coastline. So we want to see what we can do to really help. And with that, especially, from the course perspective, we do have our engineer beaches where we're going in and beach renourishment, but then on these other beaches that don't, looking at what are some possible solutions and areas that we can help in restoring those using either natural resources or maybe even looking at engineering solutions as well. So those are things that we're going to be focusing on. And Rick, you want to add anything?
No, not really. Well, we do a lot of work with community outreach, so some visioning. We've got some visioning tools to develop sort of recreational plans or sometimes local foods, local places, how to integrate agricultural sort of marketplaces as economic development. So from a sustainability standpoint, we kind of go across the environmental, the community, and the economic aspects of that landscape. So we have a number of different tools that we can bring depending on what those priorities are at the local level.
And one thing I forgot to add is the Corps does have a lot of hydrologic tools we're developing to help in predictive flooding. We're looking at a lot of climate change and sea level rise. We're developing a lot of those tools, especially with our Engineering Research and Development Center. So those can be made available too as well. So that may be able to help support some of this aspects as well.
Thank you. Dan?
Well, I heard a lot that there's an interest in the Department of Interior, but before I drill down into that, I want to mention that David did nature-based solutions. And so that can address a lot of the issues that were raised here, like water quality, because building at the ecology along flooded areas can help filter contaminants. And so it also helps prevent like future erosion, and we can use it to attenuate flood, big storms and things like that. So you'll be hearing a lot of this concept of nature-based solutions from our IRS colleagues. And one of the other, so Department of Interior brings along our sister agencies, US Fish and Wildlife, USGS, National Park Service, and we partner closely with NOAA as well. And there was a number of issues I heard today that are of interest to us. Just the commissioners' comments about, and others about the flooded highways and roadways and things like that. And USGS also has a very good water dashboard program that helps model this type of thing. And there's so what I'd like to do is, and I was just talking to him yesterday, not anticipation of this conversation, but to bring them in and provide a presentation on the use of this tool. It's very interactive, and it's very useful, like for first responders to help predict this type of scenario. So we do have tools for that, and I'll bring them and that program into some kind of presentation for this meeting. Just USGS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So there was a number of certainly debris, the blockage into the streams, the waterways, the rivers. And one of the things that raises an eyebrow for me is fish blockage. So I have to reach back to the Fish and Wildlife Service and see how they're responding, what they're doing to that area. Speaking of Fish and Wildlife Service, one pointed area is from Buda and the issue with the review for the endangered species. And so I'm going to see what I can do for that. Not making any promises because
We're not doing.
these things happen. The process, but if it's sitting on someone's desk because they're on vacation or something like that, I can move it along. So that's, I think, the kind of big points that I wanted to raise. Again, nature-based solutions, how helping attenuate floods, and the work in the Fish and Wildlife Service and USGS. And it was raised earlier by someone, I didn't get the woman's name, I'm gonna have to look at the list later, about coordinating flood metrics and using satellite data for that. So our partner with NOAA had a contribution in that area. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah. Several jurisdictions in here brought up non-navigable waterways, your streams and your funding for that. Just to give you an update, we've got 23 sponsors across the state right now, over 135 sites identified. Now, a lot of questions was raised about funding. There was funding in the omnibus bill. I've spoke this morning while y'all have been talking with Kentucky and Florida managers of the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. Kentucky stated that they got all their backlog applications funded. Okay, and that was, both directors said that it will be the direction of leadership to fund any projects on the waiting list. So that's a good sign. Kentucky had hundreds of projects ahead of you because of their disaster. So that's a good sign. I know Charlotte, y'all brought up, you've got 4 major areas. You could have anywhere between 2 and 15 impacted sites per area. So mapping is being done in your county right now in conjunction with FDM and FEMA PA. Anytime NRCS is on site, we're inviting everybody on site to see who has jurisdiction on the site. So that is coordination we're doing right now. DeSoto was mentioned. You've got 20 eligible sites that are in process right now. And then Fort Myers, you've got 20 eligible sites for funding. But that's where we're at right now. It is in omnibus, and they expect it to get to the state sometime in March by the time it goes through OMB and the regular channels. Not a guarantee, but that's the status based on the program manager this morning.
Thank you, Joe. Nancy?
Good morning. I'm Nancy Young, I'm an SBA advisor in the IRC, and I'm supporting the economic recovery support function. And as a part of the SBA private sector task force, we're doing assessments to identify unmet needs of businesses and nonprofits in your community. So we're gathering information from community stakeholders, the private sector on any recovery issues that are beyond the scope of the SBA disaster loan program. So if we can help you overcome short-term barriers, it should clear a path to solutions for the long term that provide a diverse, resilient, and sustainable economy in the future. So we're collaborating with the stakeholders, our federal agencies in the IRC, and our resource partners to try to help you. And we need to hear from you what's standing in the way.
Great, thank you. So, Doc, I would like to hear from your standpoint. Based on what Jennifer had said, the next step from their standpoint is to bring the notes with the details of what all the commissioners have stated in terms of the needs. And before I transfer back to IRC, I would like to hear from you if there is anything additional that you see as part of the next steps.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thank you everyone for your feedback and for your thoughts and concerns. And we're definitely going to take those notes when they're turned over to us. I took a lot of notes as well. And Colin, who's there, has kind of, I think, has already resolved some of the questions and concerns that came up. But we'll work with the IRC and we'll work with you all through our DEM staff and our regional coordinators, and as well as our subject matter experts over some of these areas, both at DEM and at other state agencies, to start putting together educational materials, setting up meetings to help resolve specific issues in your community, and try to look at, some of the disaster-wide issues. I know debris is one of them, and our teams our debris task force has been out there doing a lot of work, and we also have a vessel task force and a waterway debris task force that are trying to work through these issues. I know there was also a question about the permanent work extension. We're tracking that as well. I'm sorry, the emergency work extension for category B for debris removal. So we'll work down those issues. But yeah, we're looking forward to getting the notes from this meeting, and we'll follow back up with you all either individually or as a group as appropriate. And thank you.
Perfect, thank you very much. Tanya, turn it back to you.
Thanks. The last thing I would add on the IRC side, and really led by our community assistance group, is we are in the process of having community-based outreach meetings. And that's really with just local officials. We were out in the town of Fort Myers Beach yesterday. We had, a lot of this group here, and sit down and really just have an intimate conversation with key folks that, what's keeping you up? Where are you? What do you need? What have you already got? What's the regulatory side? What is that funding side? What are those gaps that you have? How are you with cost share? And it can really be a drill down. So I think there's kind of a two layer opportunity going forward. One, getting these notes and letting us really dive into them and pick them apart. And yet at the same time, if you would like that sit down conversation with this group, kind of an intimate that just focuses only on yours, or you want to drill into an issue that you brought up, we'll make sure you have the context. That would go through Laura Kirby, our community assistance field coordinator, and they're in the process of reaching out to those. I think we've got Sanibel coming up. I don't even want to speak. Highlands is on the calendar. Sarasota, they're going to be out there tomorrow. So don't hesitate to schedule time. We can do it via Zoom if that's more appropriate and expeditious for you and your staff, but don't hesitate to do that as we wait on those comprehensive notes as well. And that's it. Anything else?
Thank you, Tanya.
And then one more point to add. I know Doug had mentioned the regional recovery coordinators as well. I believe information has been sent out to you guys about the new Region 6 regional recovery coordinator, Catherine Thompson, who's going to be starting, or it's just started and has already hit the ground running. So you should be hearing from her if you have not already.
Yeah, great. And really, I just want to emphasize to take advantage that you have these great resources at your hand. Basically, to have that one-on-one conversation. And again, a lot of the issues discussed here were water related, which we know is one of the major problems that the state faces. But as you look into your community as a whole, what are other aspects that you believe should be part of those priorities, or the things that you haven't been able to even bring up because you haven't found the venue to talk about it. So once we sit down and have that one-on-one deeper conversation, is again, look at us, your community as a whole. Not only again on infrastructure, can be any other social issues that you see that you're facing. And again, by us listening and going deeper, then we'll be able to assess who is the best or how is the best way that we can provide assistance in this recovery. Great again to hear from you, and we're looking forward to having those one-on-one discussions.
Thank you. Let me thank everybody from the IRC for coming down and attending in person. I know it was a great benefit to have this conversation for everybody that was here. Thank you to Jennifer and the staff for having this, and for all the members for sharing their need. I think I probably can express for everyone, you know, there's clearly immediate needs. These are urgent, and it's to everybody in the state and federal family to figure out how to be creative to expedite the resources that are needed. I think that probably goes without saying, but it can't be said enough. I think everybody probably feels that that's in this room. So thank you for this session.